Over the years, we've talked a lot about raised bed gardening, and we've been real pleased with our results. So we're going to be developing some new raised bed gardens here in our expansion area. And Alan is joining us today to help us demonstrate how to build these raised bed gardens. But before we get started, we want to give you a few reminders about some of the benefits of raised bed gardening. To start with, we can really see a lot of results just from less compaction because we're not in the gardens or packing them down, and so as a result we get better aeration and the root systems seem to grow much better, so hopefully better yields. And also with better yields we're going to see a better utilization of space where we can plant our plants a little bit closer, and that will also help in shading out the next benefit, which is fewer weeds. Again, better utilization of space, we're going to have less weeds, and it just seems to be a little bit easier to maintain because we can sit on the beds, kind of relax and enjoy our gardening a little bit more. And lastly, better pest control, just again because it's easier to use the raised bed gardens. Now it doesn't mean no pest control, but for some reason I think we enjoy it more, so we're out monitoring those plants a lot more often.
And Steve, some of the things I like are better drainage. By getting the beds up off the ground a little bit and elevated, you just have better drainage here in Oklahoma. Less soil erosion, you're confined in the timbers that we have here with our raised beds. And earlier warm-up, by being just elevated a little bit, the sun warms them a little quicker during the year. And you can create the ideal soil. You know, here at our gardens, the Oklahoma clays are a problem, and we can build these beds just the way that we want them to grow the things that we need.
So you can see there's really a lot of good benefits, but there's also some negatives as well, and one of those might be the initial cost. Now Alan, with a bed like we've got designed here, what would just the materials cost on a bed like this?
You're looking around $60 for this bed right here.
Okay, and of course we will show you later on in the season that you can actually pay for some of these beds. And the other thing that we don't want to give you the impression is that it's a no maintenance type of gardening. Any type of gardening is going to have a little bit of work to do, but we feel like again it's low maintenance, and again that's real beneficial. Now Alan, on beds like this, we've been real selective in where we're putting them. We've tried to get them in full sun because of the plant material that we're going to grow. But let's talk a little bit about the width of the beds and the size. In most cases we try to go 4 feet width so we can sit on a side and work in it. What about lengths?
Well, in lengths we need to stay in multiples of 4. Either a 4x4 bed or a 4x8 or 4x12. Here these beds are 12 foot on the back side and 8 foot on the inside.
And really you've got a neat design here. Tell us about the design and the informal gardens there.
Well, I wanted something that'd be a little intensive gardening. So I've designed this formal garden here with 4 L-shaped beds and a diamond-shaped raised bed centerpiece that is 8x8. And we'll have a focal point. It'll give a lot of room to have tours and groups come through here.
Well, obviously, Alan, a job like this takes a lot of planning on paper, but we also should do some planning with our tools. What do we have here that we need for a task like this?
Well, Steve, we've got several things, and let me show you some methods that we're going to use to pin or nail down these timbers. There's always some long barn nails that you can buy, or some 8-inch spikes, 10-inch or 12-inch. They come in various sizes. Rebar that you can even use to pin them with. It'd be helpful to have a 4-foot level or about that long to help level your beds. A frame and square, which most of us might have at home. A large hammer or even a regular hammer will work. And a heavy-duty drill. Here we're using a 1/2-inch drill with a 1/2-inch bit that we're using our rebar to pin our timbers with.
And that's to stabilize. Of course, there's some other tools that you might need too to try to help in the success of the gardening. We like to either put down some weed barrier to help keep the weeds out, or some other materials to maybe help keep some of the varmints out that might crawl up in them. And then when we're using landscape timbers, anytime that you're making fresh cuts on them, it's always good to practice safety and use gloves, dust mask, and then we like to keep some water sealant around to paint over those fresh cuts. And Alan, when selecting the landscape timbers, it's real crucial that we do our homework there too. Tell us what we need to look for when selecting landscape timbers.
Well, when you're picking out landscape timbers, you need to look for ground contact landscape timbers, which that is 0.4 CCA treated. There's 0.2 CCA treated, which is above ground contact, which is like building deck material.
And that CCA treated is just copper chromated arsenate, which is pressure treated on them. And that's why these are safe to use in a garden situation. But again, when you make that fresh cut, that's when you need to use the application here. Now, what can a consumer do to get information when they go to the garden center if they're not labeled to find out what they are?
Well, you can ask the people there, and they also have available a consumer information sheet that they'll furnish to you upon request that'll list talking about the treatment of this lumber.
And the safety features, I guess, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we've got all of our tools ready, Alan, give us a few tips on how to make this project a little bit easier.
Okay. To make your project a little easier, you need to start with a level base. Fill in your holes with fill dirt or take down any ridges. A tiller might help in that project. Straight lumber is a necessity when you're building beds. Crooked lumber just leads to a lot of headaches. If you have lumber that's delivered and they deliver you crooked lumber, send it back. Use a square and a level when you're building these beds. This will help keep the ends square and the sides level. This will help in the appearance of the beds. Stagger the joints. This will add strength and durability to your beds. If you're using rebar pins, you need to drill a hole that's a size larger than your rebar. In our case, we're using 3/8 rebar and using a 1/2-inch drill bit. The rebar also needs to extend into the ground 12 to 15 inches. This will add a little bit of stability to the beds. If you decide to use spikes, pre-drill your holes with a bit that is smaller than the spike. This will prevent splitting as well as make it easier for you to drive that spike into these timbers.
Now this next step may cost a little bit more, but I think it's one that's very much a good step and it's very preventative depending upon what your needs might be. You'll notice that Alan is running out some chicken wire here, and the reason that we're putting this in is to maybe stop any kind of a large predator like a gopher that might be coming up or burrowing up through the beds. Now notice the size of the mesh and the holes are really too big to use for any kind of a smaller, like a rat or a mole. So you'd want to try to find any kind of wire that has a smaller mesh, or even a hardware wire would work. Now again, that's just to use to keep them from burrowing up in the bed. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. We're just rolling ours out, holding it down with sand and tacking it along the sides, but you could have put this one down ahead of time under the timbers and it would have benefited as well to keep a little bit more security on it. Now the next thing that we're going to put in is some landscape fabric or weed barrier that you might hear it referred to. And again, when we lay this in, we're going to tack it up along the sides here so that we're going to stop any weeds from growing in between the cracks and try to keep weeds like Bermuda grass from growing up through the center. So we've kind of got a double protection barrier there. Now the thing you need to remember is you want to choose something that's out on the market or even some type of material that allows water to go through the material. Using black plastic, if you don't puncture any holes in it, will actually sometimes hold the water underneath the soil and it can sour, and if the roots grow along there it can cause some problems. So you still need some good aeration and drainage depending upon the material that you use. And again, these are just options. It depends on what your particular needs are. But I think, Alan, after we lay this down, we'll be ready to put the soil in and get gardening. Now tell us what you're going to mix in for us.
Well, for us out here, we're going to put some sandy loam soil and some silage topping. The silage topping will add a lot of organic matter and a little bit of fertilizer to our beds.
And of course, we have access to that because of the dairy barns here on campus, but you really need to check around any good type of organic matter in your area. And a lot of times you can find scrap type stuff at garden centers, farm co-ops, those types of things. So do your homework and make sure, again, it's the most important step that you get good, rich, well-drained soil right off the bat to alleviate any headaches in the long run. And of course, if you want to try to build a raised bed, there is a fact sheet number 6033 that's available at your county extension office that gives you a lot of good techniques that we've been discussing today. Well, we built another raised bed a couple of months ago over by the barn, and I want to take you over and show you how it differs from this one. Well, this is one of our oldest raised beds here at our studio gardens. It's really been a focal point up against our barn, and we've used it probably for 6 years as an annual bed, and we have 2x6 treated lumber that encompasses, again, about not quite a 4-foot width. And we've kind of stole one of the ideas you saw earlier in one of the shows where we interplanted some of the tulips last fall with different pansies and violas with different purple, yellow, and white color contrast, and it's really turned out nicely. And it's been such a nice planting bed that we decided to extend them here around our deck. Again, we're using the same 2x6 treated lumber, and really the purpose of it has been to block out the view from up under the deck. And in this bed we've tried a little test with Dusty Miller that we planted last fall. We've got two varieties, the Silver Dust, which has a little bit coarser leaf, and then one here that you can tell the plants have died out in the center that is Silver Lace, and again it's more of a delicate texture and it's not been quite as winter hardy or cold hardy, and I think we've gotten a little bit of disease in it as well, so the Silver Dust variety's done well for us. Now we've got a little transition zone that we use as a walkway where we put in some gravel, and then it will give us good drainage from our water spigot here, and then we've left a little area where we can set in some containers to add a little bit of flair during the growing season. But at the very end of the deck with another raised bed is one of our most commented on planting areas, and that's our OSU colors using pansies with black and orange. And the black is really just a deep dark purple that looks black, and that particular variety is called Jet Black, and it's from the Clear Crystal series, and Stokes Seed was kind enough to donate those to us. And then the orange, the variety is Padparaja, and it's named after an orange sapphire from Sri Lanka, and it's really thought to be the first true pumpkin orange pansy, and again it really makes a nice contrast, and the good folks at Ball Seed Company donated those. So we've been real pleased with the orange and black color, and again I think it just gives you some new ideas on how you can intermix cool season winter annuals and some of your raised beds in your own garden trials at home.